And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of your fastly growing favorite sports podcast, the Somewhat Sports Podcast. As always, your favorite trio is leading the charge on this episode. It is myself, Jurgen, along with Dame and Chris, flanking me to my left and right. Fellas, how are we doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Snow day, so we're all inside anyway.
Same shit, different day.
That's what I like to hear, everybody. We have another NBA centric show today, ladies and gentlemen. No major hockey updates this time around. Kind of more just the same position where we were last weekend. The NFL, there were some decent games this past weekend, but not really any groundbreaking news, I should say, to really update everyone on. So we're sticking with basketball today. And we got a good bit to talk about. There is a certain contract extension handed to a guy near the center of the country that we will get to in a moment. And finally, after some teases these last few weeks, we will give you all our Western and Eastern Conference standing predictions for this upcoming 2020 to 2021 season. But first, fellas, let's go to the most recent breaking news before we give our predictions. Giannis Antetokounmpo, after what Shams reported was that the Bucks offered this contract extension to him several weeks ago, finally agreed to this deal, the Supermax with the Milwaukee Bucks, the richest contract in league history. So, Dame, start this off. What was your immediate reaction when you heard the deal?
Um, Part of me always knew it was gonna happen, to be honest. But then just actually seeing it, it's like, wow, okay, so it is true. I think it's good for the league in general that it's not another superstar that's going to say the Warriors or the Lakers or the Heat that would make it a super team like it was with the Warriors before. So I do think it's good in that sense. I also think it's good for Giannis for his legacy to stay in Milwaukee, and especially if he does win the title there, it'll look even better for him. Um, but yeah, maybe like I said before in the other episode, maybe the Drew Holiday thing really showed whether it's a championship winning move. It showed Giannis that the Milwaukee Bucks front office and ownership is willing to do whatever they can to put the best team around Giannis to give him the best chance at a championship. So overall, I just think it's a good deal for both sides and it's good for the league as well.
Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, so pretty much agree with Dame. I'm pretty sure we're gonna echo similar statements here. Yeah. So I like this move for the league. I like this move for small markets. I don't know if I necessarily like it for Giannis. I like it for his legacy. I don't know if I like it for his chances of winning a championship because I don't believe that the Bucks will be winning a title soon, at least for the next 2 years. That's my personal opinion. We could disagree to that. If you guys want, of course, but I don't want to look at that right now. This is a huge summer for, I think, small markets in general. Giannis stays, De'Aaron Fox stays in Sacramento, Donovan Mitchell stays in Utah. Huge win, but this is like the icing on the cake. From a guy that was the 15th pick in like one of the weakest drafts considered to now getting the richest contract in NBA history. Well deserved. He improves every year. He has the tools to become, he's already one of the best players in the NBA. I think he has the tools to become the best player in a few years. But other than that, yeah, he deserves it. Giannis is a great guy, from what I think, from what I see. The Bucks did all they can, and part of me was skeptical that because I thought all this waiting would lead to him just not signing it. And Jurgen, I know you're a little bit heartbroken because this means he's not going to sign with the Miami Heat, but I think it's just better because there's some parity. Yeah, I mean, if he does win a ring in Milwaukee, I think he's just solidified. I think personally in his own life and just professionally on the court. But yeah, not much else I could say about it other than huge win across all factors. I'm just skeptical about him possibly winning a chip there. But if he does, GG him, and then screw me. So go ahead, Jurgen.
So, summer 2021, something will still happen for the Heat. I definitely believe that. So, just wait out, just wait, NBA, just wait. But aside from that, obviously, yeah, this is a big W for Milwaukee. But I think it's a big W for reasons aside from the fact with Giannis resigning. But I'll get into that in a quick moment. Like you guys echoed the sentiments for. This is the best case scenario that the league would have loved because Adam Silver especially, he's one that he's really wanted to see some parity amongst the teams in the league. He wants these small market teams to be able to retain their players. It really started to the end of David Stern's tenure and going into his, where they added all these extra things that should give the small market organizations an advantage in order to keep their superstar players, like a designated player extension after the rookie deal, like the supermax for players that achieve certain things in their career. So I think it was a win for the NBA in terms of all those rule changes we've seen over the last decade to keep a guy like Giannis in Milwaukee. So I definitely agree with you guys on those 2 points. But I think the underrated thing that we could see, and this is just me bringing like a theory that I haven't really been seeing or hearing anyone talk about, when it comes to Giannis signing the supermax. Obviously, I think most definitely in the short term, the next 2 to 3 years is for the Bucks to try to strike gold with him staying. With this commitment now, they can try to make some moves. But I could actually see the possibility. And the only reason I'm saying this is because in these last couple of seasons, we've seen guys sign the supermax with the team that they said they were going to stay with and end up getting traded. Most notably OKC with Westbrook and Paul George, when Paul George eventually said, "I want to leave." I think while Giannis loves Milwaukee and he wanted to stay there, I think in 2 to 3 years, if they still haven't won a championship or at least made it to the NBA Finals, I think we could see this whole thing turn. Because no matter how you dice it, Giannis is the most valuable commodity on the Bucks without question. And they had to give up a lot of assets for Drew Holiday. Now, if Drew Holiday stays or goes, we wait for next season because his contract is going to be up. But let's say this whole thing in 2 to 3 years, they don't make a finals appearance. I could still see Giannis potentially not making a stink of it, but he could kind of float the idea to the organization like, look, either we do something or I'm guaranteed gone in a few years. And I think I know, like, from an ego perspective, he doesn't seem like the type to do that. But if he wants to win, if they're not close to it in 2 to 3 years, I actually don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. But for the short term, this was the best for him. This is the best for the team. And they remain NBA Finals contenders at this moment until we see otherwise.
I mean, I think in the discussions about this contract extension, I think he talked to them about possible future plans. So that's why I didn't go too deep into that. But I see what you're saying. I do think there's a 3-year window. I do think as long as the Nets are kind of there, then it's going to be kind of difficult for him personally, or Philly. I think it's going to be a top-heavy Eastern Conference. I I think after that, I think it's his best shot of winning, and then maybe his game will be fully developed by then. Maybe Giannis will have a shot by then to a point where he becomes truly dominant. But I don't know. Gut feeling is that he's had these discussions with the front office about possible moves or possible ways to improve the team in case you know, success isn't reached by the first 2 seasons. That's just my personal opinion.
Right. I think that is the case, really. Dame, you wanna give some closing thoughts on it?
No, just the same thing you guys said. I'm sure before he signed this extension, he did have conversations with the front office, whether it was about Drew Holiday a couple weeks back, or like you said, the future plans. He definitely had to have a conversation with them, and whatever they had to tell him about their plans, he had to be comfortable enough to sign for an extra 5 years to stay there.
Right. Right. Most definitely. I'm sure Houston Rockets fans wish their superstar could be doing something like that right now. But
LOL.
moving on, moving on from that, ladies and gentlemen, to the meat and potatoes, quote unquote, of the show today, our NBA conference predictions for this upcoming season. We are going to start in the Western Conference, and we are going to go seed by seed. So I'm going to start things off with the first seed, guys. You give your thoughts on my pick and who you think it'll be, and we're just going to keep going from there, two down all the way to 8, and also some of these extra teams that could make it, because remember, the play-in is an official thing going forward because Adam Silver really liked how it turned out with the bubble. So, that ninth and 10th seed, it means a lot more going down the stretch of a season than it ever has before. So my first seed that I have in the West for this upcoming season, I think it's the LA Lakers. We've already said these last few weeks on the podcast, all the names that they've added, and I'll let you guys go into more detail with that. I just simply think it's this. When the defending champions from the previous season go into the next season having actually an improved roster, that just makes them more dangerous and lethal. And the moves that the Lakers did to give themselves more offensive depth to start the season kind of gives more leeway for AD and Braun to rest early on. So not necessarily miss games, but like, instead of 35 minutes these first few games, maybe it'll only be like 29 or 30, and those extra few minutes each game will make a difference in the long haul. So I think the Lakers are my first seed just because the champions got better, and we can rarely say that for a sport.
Yeah, so I think we're all in consensus. I also have the Lakers as well. This is pretty simple. No one is beating LeBron James and Anthony Davis 4 times. Let's just be honest real quick. As long as you have those two, nothing's gonna go wrong. They got the first seed without this deep of a team last season, so now that they have like an actual bench and just more talent on the team, it just further solidifies them as the best team in the NBA. But I mean, just put that aside. LeBron and AD, it's pretty simple. You just those two, and you can't really. There's not enough ammunition to go against that argument about them having the first seed. I don't like it, but the Lakers are gonna have the first seed again.
Well, actually, I don't have the Lakers as the first seed.
What?
I have them as the second seed, and I have the Nuggets as
Really?
the first seed.
Wow.
My reason being is because I just don't see the LeBron and AD playing enough games for them to have the number one seed. Yes, I think they'll play enough games to have like a top seed, which I have them at 2. But whether they are playing or they're not, they might not play enough minutes for them to win these games. And I just think the Nuggets, they know that they are at disadvantage when it comes to the Lakers in the playoffs, so they would need that home court advantage, whether there's fans or not. It's just being in their own houses to sleep in, or playing on their
Right.
own court, their own practice facility. Like that comes into play, and that makes a difference. Therefore, I do think the Nuggets will be a full go to get that top seed because they know the Lakers are coming off a championship in a shortened off season, so they know that LeBron and AD and maybe other veterans will be taking games off and kind of cruising in the regular season. Therefore, that's why I would have the Nuggets at 1 and the Lakers at 2 because they still are good enough to have one of the top seeds. I just don't see them having one.
Okay. Wow. Damien with a little bit of a yeah.
Hipster Dame,
Yeah.
just switching it up.
Yeah,
All right.
going against the curve here. But no, I definitely see that logic. And I think that's something, I was actually arguing before last season that the Nuggets were going to try to make a push for that first seed because I think the year prior, them being the second seed to the last year of KD and the Warriors, and with how they finished last season as the third seed, if we had had regular games in like in a home arena, I think it could have maybe affected them a little, but I still think they would have done as well as they did. But no, I definitely see that, and especially like you said, Dame, like the not needing to travel for the those first few games for them, especially if they close out the previous series at home. Let's say like that'll be very valuable.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
think they,
Dame,
I think they, I think they'll need. They know they need an advantage like that to overcome the Lakers in the playoffs.
right, or at least give themselves the best
Yeah,
possible
yeah, yep.
equalizer. Yeah. Okay, so Dame starting us off early with some quick ones. Okay, the Nuggets are his first seed. The Lakers are his second seed. Okay, so Chris, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to disagree here. I'm going to give my second seed real quick. I think we're going to see something very similar to last year. Honestly, I know again maybe they might fall because their superstars will rest, but I think there's some urgency in the organization. I have the Clippers at my 2 seed. I think the failure of last season, the urgency, even though I did see a recent report somewhere that like there are some in the organization that are still very confident of Kawhi resigning. I think another tough loss like they had last season will do them no favors. And I think if they don't think they could get the first seed, but I'm sure they do, but if at the best case scenario they get the second seed, like you got to get the highest seed you can possibly get. And if you think LeBron is still going to be too much, I think they'll gun for that second seed, try to get home court advantage again in at least the semifinals. So I got the Clippers as my number 2.
Yeah, so I have the Nuggets as my number 2. I just think the Nuggets are always like weird to me because they have enough talent to be the first seed, but there's always like these like lingering injuries into like some of their players, like Will Barton here and there, and then it's Gary Harris, and then Michael Porter Jr. But now that Michael Porter Jr. is there as like a full time basis, I think they're gonna have enough firepower. Oh my god, Denver is so deep, bro, and their 1 and 2 guard play is just too deep, and I think they're just gonna outrun opponents, and their offense is gonna be so fluid. Yeah, that's about it for my second seed. I don't have much to say about it.
All right. And I think with how that's going, I think I definitely see who your guys' number 3 seeds are. So I'll let you guys go with it. The Clippers are your number 3.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm basically. I see what you're saying, Jurg. I think they're more aware and they're more focused this season. I do think it's a shortened off season though, and I still think they believe in load management. I don't. I think it's the same as the Lakers, but they're just not as talented as the Lakers. So I think Kawhi, especially Kawhi and Paul George, are going to rest as much as they can. I know the league is trying to cut down on that, but it's inevitable at this point. But I do think Serge Ibaka, Batum, and Luke Kennard. There's again minor improvements, but not enough, as I said in the last episode. But yeah, I just don't trust the Clippers to play like a whole full season, like with their whole team. So load management, the main reason why I have them as the third seed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Dame, similar.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. What you just said load management is the reason I don't have them higher as the Lakers or the Nuggets, but they're just too talented to be lower than a 3 seed, in my opinion. And like Jurgen said, that sense of urgency, like they need to prove themselves this season because last season was an absolute disappointment. And like Lou Will, I think he came out and said that he's not taking any load management games. I mean, I'm sure that doesn't apply to Kawhi or Paul George, but that's something. So
Right.
yeah, load management is the reason why I don't have them higher, but they're too talented to be any lower.
Right. I definitely see why, and I definitely don't blame you guys. So, process of elimination, the Nuggets are my 3rd seed, 1, 2, 3 in my predictions, just like last season. I definitely don't blame you guys. I think depth definitely matters, and I think Chris makes a great point. And Dame, like you said before, you have them as your first. I think depth for the Nuggets this year is key. They're a 10, 11 man roster, which I think it gives them an extra edge against teams that are not at their level come playoff time. The only reason they're my number 3, Chris, kind of like you said, they're a little bit weird sometimes. Like I think this season, I think what'll make the Nuggets take that jump, and it's just something we need to see on a more consistent basis. Like I know he had a show out in the playoffs. Jamal Murray did, and I know Jokic the year prior had his own, but I need to see them enforce their wills a little bit more here and there as the superstar players. I know they definitely did a great job of it the last 3 games against the Clippers in their playoff series last year, but I do think to an extent, like you said, Michael Porter Jr., while he is an asset offensively, I think sometimes his defense still lacks to me. And I think with him being way healthier now, like we've seen Michael Porter Jr. right now will be the healthiest he's been so far in his career. I think there's going to need to be a little bit of an adjustment in terms of for an overall season, how they're going to work everyone getting their touches, getting up shots, and all that. I think Bull as much as everyone loves to like point out and make a joke, not at him, but of how good he is, of how tall he is, and what he can do. I think he'll be getting more minutes this season, and again, the same thing. How are you going to manage that? Mike Malone's a good coach, but I think he's going to have to do a lot of like lineup shuffling this season. So that's the only reason why I think they could fall down a little bit to the 3rd seed. But I think similar thing to what Dame said. I think the Nuggets are too talented to where the lowest they can be is the 3rd seed, and the highest they could be is the first or the second. So I think if you're a team like them, I think that's a great compliment. Where at worst you're the 3rd best team in your conference.
I mean, yeah, well, Bull, they lost Jeremy Grant, but you have Monte Morris and you have Paul Millsap re-signed. PJ Dozier's not bad. They signed JaMychal Green. Yeah, they're too deep, bro. Holy shit. I mean, yeah, I think I don't know, man. I just think the Nuggets are gonna need to pull off a trade this season, man, to kind of get over that threshold.
Right, right. I
But
agree. I agree.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I think that's like we're making this based off of what we're seeing right now. That's my only
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
If we had the foresight, like if we somehow saw into the future and we know the Nuggets would make a deal down the line, I would honestly catapult them because I think it needs to take one of those deals to definitively put them above the Clippers and to give them more of a puncher's chance at the Lakers.
Oh, I think if they make like a heavyweight move, like if they get Bradley Beal, then I think they have the best shot against the Lakers. Like I think it'll be close if they get like a Bradley Beal.
Agreed.
Fourth
Okay,
seed?
so I I'm gonna let you guys go first because my 4th seed may shock some people.
No, they just re-signed everyone.
They relatively stayed the same, yeah.
Yeah, so I have the same. I have the Jazz at number 4. Like Damien said, I mean, everyone comes back. Bogdanovich is healthy again. Hopefully Mike Conley could kind of step up because he kind of regressed last season. But other than that, they stay the same. They have an identity. Donovan Mitchell, kind of drives that car for them, and he leads that ship. I originally had them at 5, but circumstances changed that. I mean, the Jazz are always going to be the Jazz to me, like like the 4 or 5 seed. Like I always feel like they're in that seeding. Yeah. Other than that, they didn't really make any moves for me to kind of take them seriously as like a top heavy candidate in the West. But they're always good enough to, always make noise. Like they'll always give teams trouble because they have a future superstar, and then you have Rudy Gobert at the center, and then just a bunch of pieces that complement those two. So always shout out to the Jazz for being competent. But yeah, fourth seed Jazz.
So my fourth seed is not the Jazz. I am buying stock. If stock in a player in these players was a thing, I'm pushing my chips to the table and I'm buying stock in Chris Paul. I have the
What?
Suns. I have the Suns as my fourth seed. For this reason primarily. If Chris Paul was able to take that Oklahoma City team where his second main guy was either SGA or D Schroed, you can argue whoever it is, if now he's going to bring that leadership, that playmaking, that IQ, that defensive ability, that voice to a team with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, I'm going to buy in on Chris Paul being able to lead that team along with Monty Williams, who he has experience with. So he has a guy there that knows him, knows how he leads. Devin Booker, I think, is going to take that next leap, and DeAndre Ayton, I think, is set to have a breakout year 3. A lot of people forget that above Luka, Ayton was the first pick, and while of course hindsight 2020, we would all pick Luka. I don't think DeAndre Ayton is a bad player. I think he can easily establish himself as probably the second best guy from that draft class. And I think having Chris Paul always makes his big men better whenever he goes to a team. Ask guys like Tyson Chandler and DeAndre Jordan. Their best seasons offensively were when Chris Paul was leading the charge. And I think the combination of that, they got a little bit deeper this year. They kept Dario Saric with his three-point shooting. They added Jay Crowder with his 3-and-D potential. They have some decent young pieces off the bench. They're not overwhelming, but I just look at the fact that if Chris Paul took that OKC team to where they were, which was the 5th seed, because Utah was actually 6th, if he took them to the 5th seed, then why not? Why not have them in the 4th slot? So I think the Phoenix Suns. I know this might be buying really high on them, but I just believe in Chris Paul too much and the superstar potential that's next to him that he just didn't have last season.
I mean, that's a compelling argument, Jurgen. I just can't see it though. I don't know. Um, yeah,
Look, this is just me buying high. Like, I will firmly admit that this is just me buying high, but I think the case can be made. Truthfully,
I mean, I don't have much because I don't want to really spoil like the. I mean, I'll respond to it as I say my 5th seed.
mm-hmm.
So, all right, Jerry, you said you're all right. So, Jerry, you want to go for your 5th seed now?
My 5th seed I think is going to shock people more.
Oh my God! All
I
right.
I went straight up. Like, I'm here to I'm here for a new era and for different things a little bit on some of my standings. But my 5th seed, I'm banking entirely on the help of this guy who I think is going to have an MVP caliber season.
I didn't know it.
If the Golden State Warriors, if Stephen Curry is 100% healthy and James Wiseman and Kelly Oubre are there to back him up as best as possible, it'll make Draymond Green look a lot more valuable than he was last season. And Steve Kerr getting back his healthy players, getting more talent than he had last season. And the starters that they had that are now going to transition to being role players. Like, I think there's a combo there where if you have the guys who gained confidence and playing ability last season, a top tier rookie, a 3-and-D player in Oubre, and you get your MVP back healthy, I think the Warriors have a legit shot at being the 5th seed.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Dame. Go ahead.
I have the same thing. I have the Warriors as the 5 seed. They have Steph coming back. They added James Wiseman, added Kelly Oubre, have Wiggins from last season. Draymond will probably look better than he did last year because he has all these players around him again. The loss of Clay obviously is huge, and that's why they wouldn't be one of the top seeds. But the cast they have around Steph, and obviously Steph himself, I think is good enough to be the 5th seed. I don't know if they're going to make any real championship contending noise in the playoffs, but for the regular season, I do think they'll be good enough for the 5th seed.
Okay, so my 5th seed is probably going to change just because I think he's going to get traded this season, but I got the Rockets at 5.
Mm.
This is strictly, what they have now. I know there's some turmoil with James Harden, but I like the Rockets team more this year than I did last year. I think John Wall looks really good. I think he looks really good.
Agreed.
Um, and I think DeMarcus Cousins looks pretty good, man. He looks pretty healthy, and I'm happy about that. But I just think their roster is like more balanced now, and Cousins being there allows PJ Tucker not to die at the 5 spot, so he could kind of move to the 4 or 3. And then you have Christian Wood, and then you could have Eric Gordon coming off the bench, and then Ben McLemore. So I just think there's more balance to that roster construction. Yeah, look, Harden will probably leave this season. I just think it's too bad for them right there for them to like, kind of stay the whole season. Even though I think you should give them a chance because I don't think they're gonna, win a title, but I think they might have a better shot than they would last season.
Right.
But other than that, I like John Wall. I like DeMarcus Cousins. I like Christian Wood. I think they're just more deep and it's just a more balanced roster for them to kind of slide anywhere past that. But yeah, other than that, Rockets at 5.
Right. And I think, just personally, real quick, I think if Harden even does stay there for most of the season, like, I think 5 is a respectable spot just because, to me, at the end of the day, like, if your superstar is going to act the way he is, like, I think a lot of people don't understand how much from the top down attitude can affect the rest of the locker room. And I think the longer he stays there, the more it dampens them from being as good as they could be. So I think, Chris, I think the 5th seed is their best case if they trade him because truthfully, I think they'll be freer. I think the attitude will be a lot better. If I'm Houston, I know obviously they want to hold on to him and get the best value. I'd 100% agree with that. But if you get a great value deal that you think you have now, I think you trade him because I just think in locker rooms it's an underrated thing. A bad attitude can ruin a locker room.
Yeah, but they're like, you gotta understand something. Like the Rockets don't necessarily have that young guy in their team. Like they have a bunch of like hard nosed individuals. Like they have John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins. I don't know how much James Harden could kind of affect them. Like they're kind of like stubborn in their own right. So like I don't necessarily maybe Christian Wood because he's kind of new to all this in terms of just being on like a successful team. But other
Right.
than that, I don't know if his attitude will kind of rub people off the wrong way. I just think those guys are kind of like they're having resurrection years, man. I don't think they're like hearing James Harden out. Again, if James Harden stays, they're in the top 5. If he leaves, whatever. The players, like you said, are more free. I don't know. I just think the players will be fine regardless of what happens that are there.
Okay. Dame, any thoughts on that?
No, just same thing you guys said. I'll go into it more later when I reveal where I have the Rockets in the seeding.
All right. All right, so I'll go to my 6 now. So my 6th seed is the Golden State Warriors. Obviously the Clay injury changes everything. The reason I have the Warriors at 6 is because I think Steph Curry is going to have an MVP caliber season, of course. However, why I don't have them higher is that I don't think there's a consensus pick as to who their secondary scorer is going to be. I do not trust Andrew Wiggins in the slightest. This is an anti-Andrew Wiggins podcast. Kelly Oubre, I think, is good. He's a good addition, but I just don't see. I don't see him being as the secondary scorer. Draymond Green, limited offensively. James Wiseman, I think I think he's going to be good in his rookie year. Am I missing someone from like an offensive standpoint for them?
No, I don't think you are.
Yeah. So again, Steph Curry's going to do Steph Curry things where he's that good that he'll lead him to the 6th seed to the playoff berth. But I, it's the uncertainty of who could carry the scoring load after him.
Right.
I don't think. I think there's there's a good balance of of good scorers. Like Wiggins is a good scorer, Oubre is a good scorer, and I think Wiseman could be a good scorer. So they have a bunch of good scorers. Them like together is like a good enough balance to bring a scoring load to help Steph Curry. I just don't like. I'm gonna see Andrew Wiggins go like 10 for 23 on like 1 assist and 1 rebound, all like always, So I don't have a trust factor in one of these guys just bringing it all the time, So that's personally my doubt on it. But other than that, yeah, 6th seed.
So really quick before we continue, Bleacher Report update and also ESPN for those that have the ESPN app. Woj just announced the official NBA trade deadline date for March 25th has been approved. I just want to say it's highly ironic that Chris says this is an anti-Andrew Wiggins podcast, and funny enough, neither me or Dame had him as a reason as why we have them as the fifth seed, which I find hilarious. Like, good timing. Dame, go with your sixth.
At 6, I have the Portland Trailblazers. We talked about this a bit a couple episodes ago. They did get a little better with the addition of Robert Covington, but they didn't get really enough better to make themselves a true contender in the West. I think they're gonna go off the momentum of they had last year to end the bubble season. Um, I don't see them again just as the Warriors and the Jazz. I don't really see them making any true noise to like the top seeds in the West, but they will be an entertaining team to watch. Of course, Lillard, CJ, Melo, Covington will definitely help their defense, which is their biggest problem last season. Um, yeah, they're just a team that I just have a 6. Nothing crazy.
I definitely don't blame that. Um, my sixth seed, and this is lower than I've seen a lot of people are projecting this team online. And
I already know it.
I'm gonna throw this to you guys because I need to understand why a lot of people are having these guys so high. I have the Mavericks as my sixth seed. Um,
We'll
like
get to that
like
because I have shit to say.
Okay. Like, listen, I love Luca, and I firmly believe. Like, listen, this is a pro Luca podcast. If we're just declaring things, like, we all love Luca. You know, represent the Balkans as much as you can, Luca. We
Yes,
coming
sir.
for you. But I don't think they made enough moves as a team to take that step as being a top 3 or top 4 seed. Again, if Kristaps is healthy now, I think him being that second scoring option for them is critical. They could have used him in that Clippers series. Heck, maybe they could have upset the Clippers in the first round if he had been healthy the whole time. Who knows? Like, we just don't. Um, I like the Josh Richardson move that they made. Of course, I'm a fan of him. You're gonna get Powell back. Like, I think they have a solid roster, and when you have Rick Carlisle as your coach, you're gonna be a competitive team night in and night out. But guys, I'm gonna throw this to you. Like, why do you think the Mavericks have been as over? I don't want to call them overhyped, but like,
No, they are.
why are people having them as a third or fourth seed? I don't see a third or fourth seed when I look at the roster.
Honestly, I
Yeah.
don't
So,
either.
all right. So I guess I'll carry this tangent right now. Look, Luca is generational, so I'm gonna be straight up. I don't see them like people have him as a fourth or third seed. I'm like, or a fifth seed. I'm like, yo, bro, calm the f down. I think this is a team that objectively got worse. To be honest, you lose Seth Curry. Porzingis is out for the beginning of the season, and even after that, you just don't know about him. That's 2 knee surgeries, right?
Right.
Right. So it's just it's an uncertain KP health. Luka's Luka, and then Seth Curry's out. Yeah, Josh Richardson is, I like that addition too. I like their little rookies as well, but they don't have like a deep team, to be honest.
Right.
I don't understand. I think people are kind of like banking off Luka going hard. Again, this is a pro Luka podcast and an anti Mavericks podcast at the same time. I just I don't see the hype with them. I don't see they're not talented enough to overcome like the teams you already said. The bubble produced a lot of juiced offenses, right? And I think Luka's talented enough to like get to that point. But let's be honest, like if that was normal circumstances, I don't know if he has like 40-point games like that regularly.
Right.
I think he'll have triple double games, but to like because he was dropping like 40, 15, and 16. I'm like, all right, bro. Like these are like 2K numbers. I don't think it's happening in like a playoff atmosphere crowd, but even though it's like an empty arena for now, we'll just talk about that. I don't know. I think the Seth Curry subtraction is actually big for them, in my opinion, because
Right.
while Josh Richardson may be as good a player, I think Seth Curry complements Luka a bit more.
Yeah.
Other than that, like James Johnson, he adds toughness, but Jurgen, you know this. He's an offensive liability. He's not going to give you like 15 points a game. Let's
He'll
be
have
honest.
one game. Like, he'll have that one game that makes you think it's like, oh, maybe we're gonna get something, and then like he's gonna be silent the next like 7 to 10.
Yeah, bro. I just don't see it. And Tim Hardaway Jr. Again, I love how people are gassing him up now. Everyone looks good when there's Luka next to you, man.
That's
We
true.
need to stop this motion that like, oh well, the Knicks gonna ruin them. No. Everything looks better when you have a generational talent playing with you, like when you're playing with them and when they're around you. They make you better. They give you open shots. I already stated all my grievances and plus uncertainty of Porzingis. I think that's a big thing going forward.
I'll say my Mavericks take for a little bit too. All right, so my 7th seed was the Houston Rockets. The reason I have them this low is because of what Jurgen said before. Is just if they do keep James Harden, it's just gonna be such a chemistry issue, and a team issue in that locker room. I think is gonna go into the core and affect them. And then even if they do trade him and get rid of that, like I just don't think they'll be good enough by then. I don't see any team really giving a star player that will help them improve their standing. I think it's gonna be a young player and a bunch of draft picks. So I have them as a 7 seed. I really think if they trade James Harden and they miss the playoffs, I wouldn't be shocked at all. They did improve with John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, but you never know with those two. Always hurt. Uh, so 7 seed is where I have them at. That could always change based on the James Harden trade, but even if he does stay, I don't see them going any higher because of the issues they're gonna have in that locker room.
Right, right. I definitely second that. Like I said earlier, and I definitely see what Chris's point was earlier because with guys like Wall and Boogie, I don't think it'll like Harden will affect them to the extent like he will some of the other guys on that team, like maybe a Christian would. I just think like even with all the injuries both those guys had, egos clash. And I think the ego, like eventually this whole thing, like I know Wall said like, oh, I'm letting the James Harden thing like go by, like, that's his business to handle. Like I think if it starts affecting the team, I think it'll quickly become John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins business of like what's going on here. So like that's my only reason I have Houston where I will have them ranked in my standings. Because to me, like, and this is from listening to athletes, like previous athletes talk about it, like just chemistry matters a lot more than what people think, and that's my thing. Really quick, Chris, do you want to give your 7 seed or you want me to go?
Do you think your 7 seed is worthy enough to go last? So is it a hot take?
It's a little bit of a hot take, I think. I got a young team making it as the 7 seed.
Okay, so I'll go. I'll go. I have the Blazers at 7. Yeah, look, the Blazers, I guess they got better. Again, I don't. The moves they made, we talked about this in previous episodes. People kept gassing their moves like they just jumped 5 seeds from like eighth. Like people think they're gonna be third or fourth. I don't see that. I think Covington is a good addition, but they did not get better at what they were bad at, which is defense. I get the Nurkic healthy is big too. Cantor's there, but so they have depth at the center position, but still defense sucks. I just can't see them overcoming the other teams, to be honest. But again, they could overperform. I think they're one of those teams that, like, if they're higher than what I have them projected as, I
Right.
wouldn't be surprised. Who do they cop? That Harry Giles is balling out, so props to him. Maybe Gary Trent Jr. could make a step forward. Yeah, but other than that, I just can't see them any higher than the 7 seed. But if they do, I wouldn't be surprised. This is just a personal take.
Right.
But Dame Lillard's gonna do his thing. CJ McCollum's gonna do his thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think the thing with the Blazers is that I think offensively we can always rely on them to have
Yeah.
those games. But it's just like you said, like if Gary Trent Jr. and Harry Giles take those next steps defensively and really help that team, I think they will be higher than all of us are expecting them to be, because if they can step up defensively, they actually become a little bit more of a problem to a higher seed in the playoffs compared to what they were last year. Because like as fun as that little run that Dame went on was, like you knew they were going to get smacked by the Lakers in the first round. Like it maybe took an extra game than what some thought. Like if the defense can step up, they maybe could like scare a team like the Nuggets, because they've beaten the Nuggets a couple of years back, or they could scare the Clippers because the Clippers already had a first round scare last year. Why not again? Um, so I have to have like this is just personally for me. I love when when the next generation of guys comes in and starts to take that next step. And there is a young team that I think last season there was some bad luck here and there, and I don't think they had the right situation. But I think their situation's a lot better this season. I have the New Orleans Pelicans as my 7th seed. And I'm not even going to say what their young superstar's name is before I get to the reasons why I like this team. I think Brandon Ingram proved he was an all-star last year. I think him being the number one scoring option on the team is a proven thing. I don't think it was empty stats like some of these other guys on bad teams were last season, like a Zach LaVine. I think he's a legit 20 plus point per game scorer and can even run a little bit of point forward at times for you. Coming with the point guard position, they have two good defensive point guards in Eric Bledsoe and Lonzo Ball. And Eric Bledsoe is a steady veteran for them to likely. I'm assuming he's going to start because head coach Stan Van Gundy, he's a guy that can maximize some players when he gets them in like the best positions. And this is easily the most talented roster he's had since the Orlando Magic days. Uh, I look at some of the depth they brought in. The veteran leadership of Steven Adams, I think, is going to be very underrated. He's that perfect, calm veteran voice in the locker room I think they need. JJ Redick shooting. Melly is a good stretch for them. And all that leads to the prince that was promised last season, Zion. I think Zion, in a fully healthy season, he's a lot more physically fit than he was last season. If he can impose his will on the game a lot better, that and really work with this team, which I think, I don't think meshing will be an issue. I think Zion and Ingram, I think they kind of understand, Ingram's the outside guy, Zion's the inside guy, and I think everyone else on the team understands, this is their team. So if Stan can get them playing and rolling early, get some chemistry down early, I think they make a little bit of a run that just keeps them as a lower seed. I don't have higher expectations. Again, this is a team, I saw someone have them as the 5th seed in their predictions, and I thought that was way too high.
Was it Bleacher Report?
May have been. I don't think so. But somewhere I saw someone had them really high. I don't think they'll be a 5th seed, definitely not. But I don't think the 7th seed is out of the realm of possibility, because I think we're about to see some star power really come from that organization. And again, I like Stan Van Gundy. I'm always gonna make a claim for the Miami guys. But Stan has a coaching pedigree that is proven, and I think he'll really be an asset to that team.
So yeah, just going on what Jurgen said about the Pelicans, I do really like their team and what they're doing, but I don't think this is their year yet. They did lose Drew Holiday, which I think he was their best player besides Zion, of course. But I think that's going to be a huge shift for them, and I just don't think they have that point guard to lead that team, because I'm not a big believer in Lonzo yet. He kind of needs to prove himself. So I do think they'll be an exciting team, but I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. So my 8th seed, I'm gonna go with my 8th and 9th, because I was really torn between picking between these two. At the end of the day, I went with the Suns at 8, because of what I saw with them at the end of the bubble last season. How they needed to go 8-0 with some help, yet they went 8-0. But of course, they didn't get the help to make the playoffs. But I think they'll ride that momentum, and of course, adding Chris Paul, which I've been wanting the Knicks to do, but of course they didn't. Uh, that combination, I think, will lead them into the playoffs. I had them over the Mavs. The reason I don't have the Mavs over the Suns is because of Kristaps Porzingis' health. He's going to be missing the beginning of the season. And I just can't. After seeing him with the Knicks and seeing him with the Mavs early on, I just don't see how you can trust him to stay healthy for the entirety of the season, even after the beginning of this. And like Chris mentioned before, Seth Curry, I think, is a really big subtraction for them. He was their best shooter, one of the best shooters in the league. He really spread the floor for Luka. When Luka wasn't in the game, he was the point guard that was running the show, and he was giving them scoring outbursts. A combination of that is why I don't see them making the playoffs. And the Suns, I just think, are a better team and more healthier than the Mavs are.
Right. But hey, I mean, the 9th seed this year is the play-in, so maybe Dallas can get some upset games if they are the 9th seed. So there's that. I'll give mine really fast before Chris puts the bow on the West here really fast. My 8th seed is the Utah Jazz. Now, I know some people might be shocked as to why they're kind of this low for me. I don't know. It's just I don't think their roster got worse, but I don't like it when teams don't get better. And while I do like Donovan Mitchell, I just have and this is like a gut feeling for me. I'm gonna just put it out there. This is a gut feeling for me. I just think somewhere along the lineup, in one or two spots, we're gonna get some regression to an extent. And I still think they're a great team. I still think they'll be a playoff team. But at the end of the day, when you're a team like them who you blow that 3-1 lead, I think for some of the guys there, that could be a mental blow, because losses like that stay on guys' minds a lot longer than we think they do for certain players. And I think ultimately they slide down to the 8th, but they still stay in the playoff hunt, obviously, because of the talent of Donovan Mitchell. And my 9th seed, this is going to shock people because I haven't said some of these teams yet. And like I said, I was going to give my take on the Blazers. This is my hot take. I'm not a believer in the Blazers. I think eventually things run its course, and I'm not saying anyone's time is over, but what I will say is this. I don't, and I'm not a believer in them making that miracle run, because they need a little bit of a miracle themselves to make it to the 8th seed. And I have the Memphis Grizzlies as my 9th seed. I'm a big John Morant guy. I think players that were injured last season are coming back for them and are going to be a year better. I just believe in the young guys, and I got Memphis at my 9.
Yeah, my 8th seed is similar to Damien's. I have the Suns as well. Jurgen, like you said, I think Chris Paul changes the dynamic of that team. He's going to elevate all those players. I don't know. I just can't see the Suns being higher than that. Maybe the 7th seed, but again, it's the Phoenix Suns, and there's a lot of inexperienced guys as well. Again, that's why I have Chris Paul. Devin Booker is a budding superstar. I think Ain's going to elevate his performance with Chris Paul there. Jay Crowder, huge. So, yeah, I mean, I could see the appeal of like the Suns getting higher than the 8th seed. It is the Phoenix Suns at the end of the day. I think Monty Williams.
Yeah, Monty Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I'm not bugging out. So yeah, I think Monty Williams is a good coach for them. I don't necessarily think he's a good coach though. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I think Chris Paul is going to be like a better coach for the young guys than actual Monty Williams. That's just me. But yeah, I think they have enough talent to make the playoff push. I'd like to see how their offense is going to be now that Chris Paul is going to be running the show. I'd like to see how Devin Booker kind of quote unquote takes a step back while Paul facilitates, because Devin Booker is so used to just making the shots for them and just creating offense. So that's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, so my 9th seed is the Pelicans. You guys said they have a bunch of talent, a bunch of young talent. They have their 2 guys in Zion and Ingram. I like Lonzo Ball, but Damon, I could see why you have your doubts with him. I just think it's motivation for Lonzo, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Uh,
agree. I see that.
I think they're gonna be better defensively because you have Stan Van Gundy's there. Their point guard play is interesting. I like Bledsoe, not as much as Drew Holiday, but they have Bledsoe now because they also drafted Kyra Lewis, who I think is going to be a very good. He could be a 6 man, to be honest, for them. Like I think he could lead that second pact, and I just think they're gonna play fast as well. So they're gonna be a nightmare for teams to guard. So other than that, they have enough talent to make the playoffs, but if they're gonna make the playoffs, then it's gonna be from the play-in tournament. But yeah, final teams, gentlemen, as their 10th spot, I'm gonna go ahead and say mine, the Mavericks. Again, there's a podcast I listen to called Pod Strickland that they bring up a good point. This team is one minor Luka. Like if Luka gets an injury, then this team could easily drop out of the playoffs, in my opinion.
Right.
I think I stated my grievances as to why I just don't think they're gonna like go as far as everyone thinks. I think they're just the talent level besides Luka, besides an uncertain Porzingis, isn't. I'm not as high on them as everyone thinks they are, as everyone is. So that's personally just me. But again, Luka's Luka, so he'll just make sure that team is gonna, at least have a shot.
Right. Right. I don't blame it. For my 10th, honestly, like Houston or Portland, they could fight for that. Like I said, I had both of them out of my top 9, and they could have a dogfight for that. I'm just not high on really either of them per se. But that just about wraps up the West for us, and we go from a very top heavy conference to one that I think is packed in the middle with some really good teams. I think this is the most stacked Eastern Conference top to bottom we've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And as such, we're going to go in reverse order. We are going to go from the bottom up, from our 8th seed and 9th seed going on. So I will start the proceedings really fast, gentlemen. I really was not sure who to have between these two teams. I've been going back and forth, and I'm just going to stick with this for now because at the end of the day, I think the proven superstars have to get the W from me for this. But the Wizards are my 8th seed, and the Atlanta Hawks are the 9th seed. I love the moves that Atlanta made during the offseason, without a doubt. And I think offensively, they're going to they're going to have some wild games this season. Like I think they'll have some games where they score into like the 130s. But at the end of the day, I look at those rosters and just in a 1-game scenario, which would be the 8th versus 9th seed technically, unless the 9th seed gets the win in the first one. In a 1-win needed scenario, I have a lot more faith in the Wizards than I do the Hawks. This is I don't want to call it an anti-Russell Westbrook show, but we are a very hard on Russell Westbrook show. And while he lost the Rockets the playoffs, although Harden did too, Westbrook had a phenomenal regular season. So if he can continue that pace, at least a good enough regular season to go along with Bradley Beal, take the pressure off him, I think that's enough to get them the 8th spot.
Yeah, so my 9th seed is also the Hawks. I think they're going to have a lot of offensive firepower, a lot of three-point shooting. I question how this team is going to mesh well together because there's a lot of players that need the ball, and they're also going to be atrocious defensively as well. But again, I think closed arenas, no fans. offenses usually get juiced in these kind of environments, so that's why I'm not gonna write them off. I'm just not as high as everyone is. But because again, it's just there's too much talent that I think is a questionable fit in terms of just everyone together. But I think Trey Young at the helm will lead them to flirting with the playoffs, and then my that'll lead me to my eighth seed. Got the Indiana Pacers. They're a well-run organization, and they always make it to the playoffs. It's just that I have other teams better than them this year. I'm curious to see how Oladipo is going to perform.
Hmm.
But other than that, I think they didn't really make any changes to the roster, any like subtractions or additions, so they kind of stayed the same. I don't know. I think it's gonna be a different season for them, but I still think they're gonna make the playoffs. They're gonna be good defensively. Let's see, all if Oladipo could kind of return to somewhat form, then they could go higher, but that remains to be seen. So for that reason, I have them at 8.
Right.
So I have the same thing as Chris, but I have them flip flopped. I have the Hawks at 8, and I have the Pacers at 9. The Pacers have a big coaching change. I really liked their coach before, and they fired him and signed. I don't even. This guy has a weird name, Nate.
Just keep going. Just
Yeah,
go ahead.
whatever. And then but with the Hawks, they obviously had a lot of additions this offseason. I think that's something that's gonna kind of give them momentum going into this season. Is gonna spark a lot of new young energy, especially with Trey Young. I think his game's gonna take a step in the next to the next level as well. Um, I like Jurgen said, there's going to be a play-in tournament for this 8 spot, and I do think if the Hawks and Pacers do match up, I think the Hawks will get the better of them. That's about it. The Pacers, I just think they're going to take a step back this season. You just don't know what Oladipo, whether it's his health or the contract extension or his fake trade demands. I think
Right.
that might be a problem with them as well.
Right.
So yeah, I have the Hawks at 8 and the Pacers at 9.
Okay, and now moving up to the seventh seed, I have a veteran team that, they had a tough offseason, but I still think there's enough leadership there to get them in the playoffs, but just barely. I got the Raptors as my seventh seed. Uh, Retaining Van Vliet was critical no matter what their future plans were going to be. They kept him. Lowry's still there. He will always be a consistent veteran, all around stat line with good defense each and every single night. He had a tough postseason, but I think Pascal Siakam is still a fine regular season player. He just needs to show a jump in the playoffs and when they make it there next time. And, the losses of Gasol and Ibaka were tough, but I think Baines and Boucher will do a decent enough job. I stress decent because I think the interior will be tough for them at times this season. Maybe they're a team that could make a bit of a surprise move because if I'm not mistaken, they have their first round pick in the next draft. So like maybe they move that. Masai Ujiri is not someone who's scared to make a move to try to help this team. So uh, I think the combination of the losses they had, but still having some good pieces there, I have them. And Nick Nurse is a good coach, like proven. He is a quality coach. So seventh seed is what I have for them. Maybe if they make a deal, they could slide up a little bit more, but I have them as my seventh at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jurgen. I also have the Raptors as the 7th seed. I think the losses of Ibaka and Gasol really pushed them back. But you're right. They're the Raptors. They're a very respectable organization. They develop their players well. You get Van Fleet on a new contract now, so maybe that motivates a little bit. Siakam, I think, will be motivated because he had a subpar to his standard subpar playoff performance. I think they're worse defensively, obviously, but I think Aaron Baines, I think it was a solid pickup in my opinion, very under the radar. Maybe Boucher could come back. Maybe Boucher takes that step up. OG Anunoby, of course. I really like Malachi Flynn, man. I
Right.
really do, and I
Same.
think he's gonna be huge for them coming off the bench. Yeah. So again, Ujiri is Ujiri, so I wouldn't be surprised as well if he has another move up his sleeve to kind of catapult them. And also, Lowry's a year older, man. We gotta take that into account. But Lowry's always gonna be that savvy, underdog kind of just like
Veteran.
veteran that he'll know what to do to get these guys in place to fight in the Eastern Conference. Like they're gonna be a scrappy 7th seed in my opinion. That they're gonna challenge like the high end teams, but they're just not as talented enough to make that push to the higher seeds.
Right.
Dame.
So I have the Wizards as my 7th seed. I know Jurgen has them at 8, and I'm assuming Chris has them higher than I do, unless he just has them complete out the playoffs. But this goes to the fact that they added Russell Westbrook this season and traded John Wall away. I think that's a clear upgrade. Um, Russell Westbrook is not someone who's going to sit out a lot of games, especially if his team is fighting for the playoffs, which I think the Wizards will be, because I think from 7 to 9 is going to be really close. So I don't see Russell Westbrook sitting out many games towards the end of the season. I think he's going to really try to push to make sure the Wizards have high of a seed as they possibly can. I think having Bradley Beal next to him is going to be really big, because Bradley Beal isn't just a shooter, but he's someone who could create, not for just for himself, but for others as well. I think they have a good coach in Scotty Brooks. Their draft went really well. So I do think they'll be a playoff team. I just don't see them as being anything higher, because I don't really like what they have at the big man position. Um, but then going into that, my 6 seed is the Raptors. You guys have them at 7, but I have them at 6. I just think they're a really well coached team, and even though they did lose Ibaka and Gasol, that's why I have them dropped from the 2nd seed that they were last year. I just think they're too well coached of a team. They still have Siakam, Lowry, so they just based off coaching, I think they'll be a 6 seed.
All right. I mean, I could see that as well.
Yeah.
So my 6 seed is the Washington Wizards. I know people. I feel like people are kind of sleeping on the Wizards. I think Russell Westbrook is gonna do good for that franchise from a character standpoint, especially for the young guys. Like, he's gonna motivate them. He's gonna get that dog out of them. Bradley Beal, of course, is Bradley Beal. We know what to expect from him. I'm curious to see how Westbrook and Beal kind of mesh together. But other than that, you have one of the best shooters next to Russell Westbrook and Davis Bertans. So I think it's going to be huge for them. Robin Lopez, you get some depth at the center position. And then Denny Avdia and Rui Hachimura. I don't know who else I'm kind of missing other than that. I mean, Ish Smith is a great bench player as well. Thomas Bryant. I think there's a lot of talent that complement each other on the Wizards. So that's why I'm pretty high on them. And plus, I think I have more faith in Westbrook, and I think he'll be rejuvenated too.
Right, right. I definitely don't blame it. I think the Wizards, like, no matter what, I think 6 to 8 is a fair range, because they have some talent, and adding that second definitive star. Well, I think obviously we see John Wall now. I think it would have been fine. I think adding another star that will be playing this season is a good thing for them. So at number 6 for me, I have said in the past, this is a snake bitten organization come the playoffs, and I don't exactly have an easy matchup for them in the first round. But I believe in Nate Bjorgren, the Pacers head coach, to be a solid enough coach. I believe he was a Nick Nurse understudy. He learned under Nick Nurse, if I'm not mistaken. And I still think that roster is talented enough to where they will get into the playoffs. I definitely understand, Chris, your thoughts on Oladipo. I think the big positive is that he's a full year plus removed from that injury. And I think at this point, if being past the injury, it shouldn't be the injury that's hampering him. At this point, if he struggles, it's not injury. It's, in mentality, how he's playing, etc. So I think that at least is a good thing, where I don't think the injury should be hampering him anymore. But I still think that roster is talented enough. I think they should have traded him. Miles Turner is still a decent threat for them. He's a defensive guy, length. He's going to help them out. Sabonis is that offensive post player for them, going at the high and the low post. They have great guard play with Brogdon and McConnell. And even though I've said this already, his bubble run was a bit overrated, TJ Warren is still going to drop 15 to 20 a night, maybe the occasional 25 to 30 if he gets hot on any given night. I just think there's still enough there, and they're proven. Like, that team has chemistry with one another, to the point that's why I put them above, like, the Raptors and the Wizards, because they have the chemistry, and they didn't take a massive roster hit this offseason compared to, like, the Raptors. So that's why I have them as my 6th seed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my 5th seed. I'm a Heat fan, as we've mentioned on several podcast episodes at this point. So it feels kind of good to say this, but I also kind of fear this team if things finally click right for them. But Philly fans, do you still trust the process? Because I have the 76ers as my 5th seed.
Holy shit. All right.
Yeah, here's my thing. I'm a Ben Simmons defender. I do like Ben Simmons. I really, really do. But if he does not take that next step, and I'm not even going to talk about the shooting. I think that's something I'll let it to you guys when it comes to where you have them placed. He needs to grow the attacking mentality at least a little bit. I think it was 2018, if I'm not mistaken. I hope my timeline is not wrong. When the Sixers faced the Heat in the first round of the playoffs, and they beat us in 5. Here's my thing. I saw firsthand Ben Simmons bend the Miami team at that point to his will without having a jump shot because he was attacking, he was creating, he was playmaking, he was aggressive in that series. And I have never seen a playoff series, let alone a stretch of games where he's been that aggressive since. If Ben Simmons can just channel some of that aggression a little more here and there, then I think they'll be higher than the fifth seed. At the end of the day, I think it was great that they got some more shooters around Embiid and Simmons. You need guys like that. I think Dwight and Tony Bradley are great bigs that you'll need because I think Embiid will rest a couple games this season. And having Dwight and Tony Bradley there is big for them. Terrence Ferguson, maybe he'll shock them. Maybe some youth off that bench, like give him like a highlight player to excite the team. And Doc Rivers, as much as I'll harp on him, he is still a good coach. He'll get the most out of these guys. I have them as the fifth seed for now. If some things change, I definitely see them higher, without a doubt. But with how they finished last year, with how poorly it happened, I just can't put them higher than my fifth.
All right, so I'm gonna I have the Miami Heat as my fifth seed, and I think it's for the reasons why Jurgen you said before. It's just like they got Avery Bradley, they re-signed Bam, but I think like the top heavy teams of the East got better. But Miami's always gonna be Miami, where they're gonna fight, they're gonna be scrappy, of course. And I trust Jimmy. I think Jimmy's gonna be motivated, especially because he lost in the finals. I do think there's a trade that Miami could pull off. That if doing so, they're gonna be ahead in the game. But I just think teams have kind of leaped past Miami in terms of just trades and just talent wise. They're like Miami's gonna be gonna be a contending fifth seed to me. But other than that, I don't really have much to say about it. But again, they could jump a few seeds if they make some trades that I think that they're capable of making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I have the Heat as my fifth seed as well, basically for the reasons Chris said. They basically are the same team they were last year, besides adding Avery Bradley. While on the other hand, I just see the top four seeds for me in the East that just got better. Uh, a lot can change obviously with trades, but as their roster is constructed now, and as the teams above them are constructed as they are now, I see the Heat as a fifth seed. But I do think they could be better than when it comes to the playoffs. I do think they could beat every single one of the teams that are above them.
Yeah, that's
But
what
in the
matters too. So, all
yeah, exactly. But when it comes to regular season, I have them as the fifth.
right, Dame fourth seed.
Fourth seed, I have the Brooklyn Nets. Now they do have the most talented duo in the Eastern Conference. However, I do think when this is the first time they're going to be playing together, not just the duo, but the duo with their supporting cast. So a lot is going to change. Obviously, Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie are going to have to take a step back. So I do think like there's going to be a meshing point that they're going to have to get through. A lot of super teams go through in the beginning of the season where they struggle because they have to get their chemistry issues resolved. So that's why I have them as the four seed. Obviously, by end of the season, that's when they're gonna get on their hot streak, and when it comes into the playoffs, they're gonna be uh, one of the most dangerous teams in the Eastern Conference. But for the regular season, I have them as the four seed because they're gonna have to overcome these team chemistry issues to start the season.
Okay, okay. I agree with Dame. Um, and Dame really said all the points. I think chemistry is going to be a key thing early on. KD and Kyrie need to mesh, not just with one another. I think they'll be fine there, but I think with that team. But I do think the Nets have a pretty good roster because Kyrie's going to be back and starting. That means either Dinwiddie or Karis LeVert, depending on like who they want to start at the two, will be on the bench, and I think that's a great six man for them. Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan is a nice 1-2 punch at center. I think it should be Allen starting and DJ off the bench. And like one guy that like actually had a decent playoffs for them, Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. If he's still on the team, I forget if he is, but if he's still on the team, he could have some nights where he hits a couple threes for them. And an underrated guy that they got, like developing 3-and-D player, Bruce Brown. They got him from Detroit for like essentially nothing. I don't know why Detroit got rid of him. I guess maybe it was to make room for one of the other 17 big men they signed this offseason. But I think like they have a solid roster. I think my main thing is like there'll be a few times, like we said, like in the West for the Lakers and the Clippers. I think there'll be a couple times early on like the back end of a back-to-back where they could sit KD a little bit, maybe even Kyrie for like just 1 or 2 games, depending. And I think Steve Nash, like while I actually think he'll be a little bit better than what some people are expecting, I think the whole thing of being a rookie coach will get him in a couple of games. Like this is something that you learn as you go. And I think Nash will not struggle at first, but he needs to learn all the nuances of coaching. And I think that'll take some time. So that's the only reason they're my fourth seed. Like if they had this roster last year and were bringing it back this season, they would probably be like top 1 or 2.
All right. So I have the Boston Celtics as my fourth seed. I think I like they finally got some depth at the center position. Tristan Thompson. I think Jeff Teague is a solid backup. I like Aaron Nesmith as their draft pick, but they lost Gordon Hayward and they're losing Kemba at the start of the season. So I just think they're gonna take a step back. Again, same argument and I had for the Miami Heat. Teams leaped ahead of them while they kind of regressed. I don't know. I'll like the Celtics to me. I don't have faith in them. They're always gonna be a good team. They're always going to be like semifinals bound, and but other than that, like it's just the lack of movements this team makes, man. They're either like conservative or they just let everything pass by them. But they have Jason Tatum, they have Jaylen Brown. But other than that, yeah, I don't have much to say about them other than the fact that they got worse offensively, and plus you don't know how Kemba's gonna be now because this knee situation is kind of scaring me because he had some time off, especially when the season got cut, and it was still lingering during the bubble. So that is kind of concerning to me. So and it may lead to kind of a step back offensively, and they already lost Gordon Hayward, so if you add all that together, I don't know how good they're going to be, but they're good enough to be in the top four for me. So yeah, I have them as the fourth seed. So let me move on to my third seed. I have the Brooklyn Nets. I think KD and Kyrie are just too good as a duo offensively. They have a lot of depth. Again, like you said, Jurgen, I like Jared Allen starting, but I know it's not going to happen. I think they were smart in making that coaching trio with Stoudemire, Nash, and Mike D'Antoni because this is going to be straight offense. There's going to be a lot of 3-point shooting. Joe Harris is going to be big for them. LeVert, I think, is going to come off the bench. So I think they're going to be more than fine. I think when you have these two offensive Titans leading the helm with like a bunch of 3-point shooters, and you have a guy that could create off the bench, and then you have Dinwiddie as well. They're just too talented. But again, I think they're gonna rest a lot. They're gonna lose some games just because KD sits out or Kyrie sits out. But I don't think they care enough for their seeding. I don't think they think it matters as long as they're kind of like in the top tier, because I think for them it's just championship or bust for them. So seeding doesn't matter to them, but because they're that deep and they have two Titans at the helm, I see him as a top 3 seed.
All right, I definitely don't blame it because I think, Chris, like a great point you bring up there. If they want a specialist, pure specialist in the lineup, and Joe Harris, and they start him at the 2, you're going to tell me Dinwiddie and LeVert are going to be off the bench most likely, like come playoff time. That's a lethal offensive lineup right there.
Yep.
So that's definitely something to watch out for. Really quick, my third seed. Don't worry, Heat Nation. I am here for all of you to be the voice in the mainstream, or not really mainstream, but still. I got the Heat as the third seed only because I think the Nets are going to do a good amount of sitting at the beginning. If KD, if we definitively knew, or if we definitively see earlier in the season, KD will be fine. Then I will have the Nets as my third seed and the Heat as the fourth. But for right now, I have the Heat as the third. While I understand that, like, the idea to a lot of people is that other teams got better, I know this directly from the organization because I listened to a sports show where the host is directly tied with the Miami Heat because he's been in Miami forever. And the thought in the organization is this. The Heat do not know if the Bucks got better. They do not think the Celtics got better. They don't know if the 76ers got better. But they do know the Lakers got better. The belief in this organization is that if they are to go into the Eastern Conference playoffs again, they legitimately believe they can make it back to the NBA Finals, as any top-tier team should. But I think the fact that they did it last year, for a lot of these guys to have that is big. I think Kendrick Nunn finally having the offseason to clear himself from whatever was ailing him in the bubble. I think we can say this without a doubt. He was not the same in the bubble that he was during the regular season. If he is back to closer to how he played during the regular season, which gave him runner up to Rookie of the Year, it'll be good for Miami. Whether it's him or Dragic off the bench, that's an offensive player right there. Jimmy is going to be Jimmy, like you said, Chris. He's going to be the leader on this team that gets these young guys going. And speaking of young guys, Bam is going to be a year better. He was 5th in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year. 2nd, I think, in Most Improved, or 3rd. Tyler Hero is going to be a year better. I'm not going to do the whole he's 20 or whatever years old. No, he's just going to be a year better from what he had last season. Like, that's a simple thing. And shooters get better when they come down to Miami. A lot of shooters improve, and you have Duncan Robinson leading the way. He would have hit 300 threes last season total if it weren't for the stoppage. And Harkless and Bradley are great defenders. Avery Bradley especially is going to be a boost for them. I think situationally with the 76ers, you're not sure what's going to happen there, who's going to be the aggressor, and with the Nets potentially early on resting guys, I think that opens up the third seed to Miami. But that's the main thing for me.
I have the Celtics as my 3 seed. It's kind of the same argument as the Raptors, but I just think the Celtics have more talent on their team. It's just that they're so well coached with Brad Stevens, and then on top of that, you have the talent in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Kemba Walker being hurt in the beginning of the season is a reason why I didn't have him as the 2nd seed or the 1st seed. But just based off their coaching and having Jason Tatum, who has another year of experience, another year of playoff experience, same with Jaylen Brown. The addition of Tristan Thompson maybe isn't a big splash move like many Celtics fans expect the Celtics to do, but Danny Ainge just is too scared to make a big move. But Tristan Thompson, I think, is a quality addition to that team. He's going to add defense, leadership, and rebounding. So I do think they'll be good enough to be the 3 seed. Going into that, I have the 76ers as my 2nd seed. Of course, you just never know with that team. They're so unpredictable, but new front office, new coaching, the addition of all these shooters, I think will be extremely good for them. I think it will do great things for Embiid and Ben Simmons, spreading the floor for them. Hopefully, Ben Simmons added some kind of jump shot to his game. I don't know, expanding from 6 or 7 feet to 8 or 9. I don't know. Any kind of improvement will help that offense. But just the additions of Seth Curry, Maxey in the draft, and having Doc Rivers as a coach, I think will be good enough to have him as a 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, so I'm agree with Damon here. I have the Sixers as my 2nd seed. I think this team is just better. They have surrounded their 2 main guys with perfect complementary pieces with Danny Green as a good veteran presence, and you have Seth Curry as well, who I think is huge. Again, I love Tyrese Maxey as well. Dwight Howard is going to be huge for them as like a backup center. So I think the ingredients are there to maximize their 2 main pieces as well. But and also there's good bench play. They're gonna be great defensively as well. They have a good balance of just great defense and really good offense. So besides that, Doc Rivers is also a better coach than Brett Brown. So you add on to that. So there's a
Right.
lot of factors. I think the Sixers just got better at all facets of team play.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So I have the Boston Celtics as my 2nd seed. Simply put, I think the playoff loss is going to fuel a couple of the guys on that team. I think, and this is actually this is a great little bit that I read about Jeff Teague and Tristan Thompson, their main 2 ads in the offseason, that I think is really big. Jeff Teague and Tristan Thompson are great additions for the regular season for the Celtics. The questions are going to be when it's postseason time when it comes to those guys. And I think that's a really great point. Like, for the regular season, Jeff Teague and Tristan Thompson will be fine. I worry about them being singled out by opposing teams come the playoffs, because the playoffs, like, and you said this before, Chris, for a different reason for a different team, but like how you're not going to beat LeBron and AD 4 times in a 7-game series, like you get an entire 7-game sample potentially to study a team, to do work on a team. During a regular season, it's harder to always exploit a matchup because you always have to keep the next game in mind and worry about what you're doing more sometimes. I think in the playoffs, the issues for the Celtics, like depth, will come up more, and I think that'll be the thing. But Tatum is going to be a year better. Like the high seedings I've seen for the Mavericks, I think the Celtics should be getting, because I think Tatum's going to take that definitive superstar leap this year. I think Jaylen Brown is a great second option. And because of those 2, I think it'll give a little leeway for Kemba to try to see if he can get back to not close to form last season, but like maybe it'll relieve the pressure on him. Like you said, Chris, he's still got some lingering injury from the bubble. I think being the third option is the best case scenario for the Celtics. If Kemba's the third, they're the 2nd seed to me. My 1st seed. So we are reaching the end of the East here.
I
Simply
think we're all in consensus here because I haven't heard
Yeah,
it yet.
yeah,
yeah.
the Milwaukee Bucks are the 1st seed. Simply for this, and I'll let you guys go into deeper detail. They have definitively. This is not opinion. This is not including playoffs. Just on regular season, they have been the most winning regular season team the last 2 seasons. They have had the back-to-back regular season MVP. They have led the league in point differential the last 2 regular seasons. Like, this is a bona fide regular season team in terms of we know they'll be great. Giannis is going to put out another amazing season. I don't think he'll win MVP because voter fatigue and all that. I kind of feel bad for him because if he has like an otherworldly season, it won't be looked at the same way as the last two have. But Chris Middleton is still there. Drew Holiday, as we've mentioned here or there, is going to be a great addition. They added some nice depth pieces. Like they're the definitive number one seed this year. It's just all about what are they going to do come playoff time.
Yeah, I agree, Jurgen. They're more deep now, and you have Drew Holiday as well. And I think the addition of Drew Holiday will take the scoring load off Chris Middleton as a second option. I think there's a lot of scrutiny towards Chris Middleton. Same, like I have also criticized him because I don't think he could be. I don't think Chris Middleton is a true two option. But you add Drew Holiday, you add a bunch of other pieces that come off the bench. Yeah, they're the overwhelming favorite as the one seed. I don't know how that'll translate in the playoffs because I think other teams will be better suited for the playoffs. I do hope that Giannis, I hope that he realizes that he doesn't have to take the regular season as serious as he has in years prior. I think he should start realizing, like, I get it, he's 25, he just signed a contract, so you just want to show that you're that guy now. But I just hope that he takes some games off, man. It's just save your energy for the playoffs. It's just up for Giannis to kind of realize it and kind of accept it and just kind of understand that it's the playoffs that matters, not the regular season. But yeah, Bucks is number one.
Yeah, same thing as you guys. I have the Bucks at one. Simply put, I just think they're better than all these other teams. They were the one seed last year. They added Drew Holiday. I just don't see how any of these other teams are going to be better than them. Like Chris said, quickly to say, like Chris said, I hope that they don't. Giannis doesn't take the regular season as serious as he has because he needs to be better in the playoffs. But regardless, I just don't think any other team is going to be better than them in this regular season.
That is, yeah, we're in consensus here. I think we were a consensus for like two out of three of us on like a few other seeds, but this is the definitive like seed that we all agree. We all definitely view this as like they're going to be an amazing team in the regular season. It's just all about the playoffs. And Chris, I think that's the perfect point. Drew Holiday will take the load off of Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton, I think, is a bit overpaid for what most people have been expecting. I think it'll be a lot better for him to have that pressure off of him with Drew Holiday being there. So yeah, those are our 2020 to 2021 NBA conference predictions, ladies and gentlemen. Fellas, do you want to give some final thoughts before we get out of here?
You want to give your just a finals prediction? Who you think is going to win?
No, that's too early.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of way too early for that. I mean, it could be fun, but I think we're a little bit too early for that.
Gotcha.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was this week's edition of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. Longer than the last few. We had a lot to talk about, but I think we all made our points. I think we gave people something to digest on and for them to talk about with their friends that they talk ball with. And thank you all for supporting us. Those who have followed us so far on Instagram. And subscribe and like to YouTube and everything. We appreciate that and the continuing and growing support we're slowly getting, and we're going to keep putting out these episodes for you guys because we love what we do and we love what we talk about. And I have two great co-hosts I do this show with. So that's about it for us here, ladies and gentlemen.
Peace.